Let's take a look at both designs and see what parts we can see more than once. There's really no point starting to style the page from the top to the bottom when we'll be writing the same CSS twice because things look the same. Looking at them together, the nav in the header and in the footer, the blue category tags here and here, which actually look a lot like the button on the landing page. Although it's not on the article page, this read more link is copied across each of these cards. The icons are also very similar, the ones in the footer and the ones in the header. So we can tackle them all together. Let's start with the navs. In both the header and the footer, the links are in line and have the same space between them. Let's go back to our CSS and create a common elements section. Now let's target the navs. In the header, the nav consists of a nav with a list with LIs in, and in the footer, it's just a nav with anchor links in. How are we going to deal with the different HTML? Let's create a class that we can use for styling both, and then we can use that class in both situations. Now we want the links to all sit on one line and be spaced out. There's a couple of ways of doing this. We could display them inline or inline block, or we could use Flexbox on the container of the links. So why hasn't this made a difference? Let's go back to our HTML a minute. As we can see in our header, the nav doesn't have the class that we need. Remember, because we are using Flex, we need to add it to the direct parent of the things that we want it to affect. In this case, it's the UL. Great, now we can add that class to all the elements that we want it to affect. So in our footer, don't forget to add it to the landing page as well. Now let's have a look at the text styling for this nav. It's grey and not underlined, and there are spaces in between the links. We can still use our class for this. We can target all the links within our class of nav horizontal. We'll add some spacing in between, but I'm going to use the padding shorthand for this. I'm going to use two values. So the first value is top and bottom, and the second value is left and right. I'm also going to remove the underline. And if we check our landing page, it's affected that as well. We needed to add this styling to our anchor element specifically because the blue text with the blue underline was added by the browser on that anchor element. Adding it to the LIs in the header wouldn't have made a difference. Let's have a look at these blue category tags. We can use the same technique, and as we look in our HTML, We've already created a class for them, both in our article page and in our landing page. They have a blue background, rounded corners and white text. So let's add that. Border radius will give us rounded corners. And we'll change the colour to white. Again, let's remove any text decoration. As for the most part, the things with the category class are links. That's pretty good, but there's a couple of other things. We need some space around the text inside of the element, and we need it to be the width of the content, not take up the entire width that it can. So we can change the display type to help us with this. The one we want is inline block, because that's going to allow us control over the padding, but keep it the same width as the content. Again, let's use our shorthand. So top and bottom, left and right. Great. Let's take a look at the landing page. All of our category tags have been affected by the same styling. Let's have a look at these icons in the footer. If we create a class from them, it will be helpful for the icons in the header later. If we take a look in the footer, we have an anchor with an image in. Let's add a class to our anchor. And remembering our landing HTML as well. Now we want the icons to all have the same height, so let's make all of them inline block and give them a responsive height. You may have noticed that the icons haven't actually changed size. This is because we've only affected the anchor elements with the class I, and not the images that are inside them themselves. Let's make the images fill 100% of the height, and they will size the width automatically. This icon class can now be added to the header, where this book icon is. Even though it's a different element, it will use this class CSS and will be sized accordingly. Okay, now we've seen some common elements. Let's start by taking a look at the bigger parts of the page, beginning with the header and getting that laid out correctly.